Welcome to Catalyst Chats, where leaders spark ideas, share wins, and tackle people challenges that shape the future of work.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsey Hammer with Catalyst Chats, and today I have the privilege of speaking with Syed. Did I get
Awesome.
that wrong again?
No, you did it.
Okay.
You got it.
I also have a newborn, and he kept me up most of the night, so my brain is operating at a different. No, thank you for being a trooper. Okay. I love it if you could just share a little bit of your background with the audience.
Sure, happy to do that. So my background is I come from the capital markets, 2.5 decades in the capital markets and data and analytics. So I've been a serial entrepreneur as well. So I launched my first company when I was a
Yeah.
senior in high school. Then after that,
That's awesome.
yeah. I'm a dinosaur. This is back in the early phases of the .com boom. So
Okay.
mid to late 90s is when I got my start. I did
Nice.
that. I was with GE Corporate and then Credit Suisse, and then Neuberger Berman, which used to be the asset management division of Lehman Brothers, where I
Okay.
built out their data and analytics division. And then after that, I left to go launch a company focusing on artificial intelligence, natural language processing, data visualization, and geospatial analytics. Built that out. And then I started getting exposure to this thing called Bitcoin, which I actually came in as a cynic of, only to read Satoshi's white paper, was completely blown away by the implications of this underlying technology. I knew that that was the arena I wanted to get involved in, so I started going big into the world of Web3, joined a very early project focusing on the tokenization of real-world assets. Ended up becoming the CEO of the Americas for that company called BankX. And then I had launched this company called Liquidity Digital, where we were building out an end-to-end ecosystem for the capital markets on top of this protocol called Zero Knowledge Proof. And then one of the things that we wanted to build out there was this deal recommendation engine. But then the cost of capital required to do that was quite significant. So we had sort of put that on the back burner until this watershed moment with OpenAI happened. And when this happened, that's when I realized that, well, let me start playing with it. And we had about 20 months ago, we were able to actually
Okay.
put together one of the first agentic solutions in the market. But then before I even went into the market, I realized that if I'm able to bring this thing together so quickly, whereas in my previous venture, that had required millions of dollars for us to be able to do so, the reality is that there is going to be a mass proliferation of these agentic solutions that are going to be coming into the market. So if that's going to be the case, let's start thinking about what the second order effects of what this is going to be. And and that's really what led me down this rabbit hole to really start thinking about what a post-agentic world looks like. And that was
Yeah.
essentially the genesis behind this concept of shared human intellect zonal agents, or SHIZA.ai, which is what we're building out now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you shared you've seen the .com boom. Now we're in this AI boom. What are like some of the similarities you're seeing? What's hype? What do you think is going to happen? And what's your vision for the future of sovereign AI agents?
Yeah. So look, I mean, in terms of the similarities, right? The similarities have been consistent across any type of innovation bubble that you start to go through, or any kind of paradigm shifts that are happening. So Web 1.0, we had experienced that. That's when I got my start. And then Web 2.0, when we started to graduate more and more towards like social media and this proliferation of consumers getting their hands onto this technology. And now with the automation of all of these things, with artificial intelligence and AI that's coming in, the similarities are what anyone would anyone that's been a part of any sort of these hype cycles, right,
Yeah.
would go through. And that is exactly that. There's going to be a lot of hype. There is going to be a lot of nonsense. There's going to be a lot of money that's going to be thrown into these things, which will lead to this formulation of a bubble. However, and there will be a pop of that bubble as well. And then once the dust clears and things start to settle, that's when the real things will start to emerge from, right? The real value is going to emerge from. However, I will say that given the state that we're in right now, and the accelerated pace of innovation that's coming in, I'll say something which will sound sort of contrarian, which is I don't even think the hype has started yet. I think If anything,
Okay.
I think when it comes to AI, it's actually quite underhyped.
Interesting.
And that's despite a lot of noise. And certainly there, you have to find the signal in that noise. But I would still say, in terms of the infancy that we're in right now, I would say that we're it's actually quite underhyped right now. And then to address your question around where I see the future going. So for us, here is what, look, AI, it's not a novel concept, right? It's not something which, just because we're talking about it now, doesn't mean that it was just born now, right? AI has been around since literally since the 60s, right? We just gave it different names, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning, it started off with data warehousing, then you started to go into big data, and then machine
Yep.
learning,
Machine learning. Yeah.
and then neural networks, and then eventually got to where we are with this concept around GAI, or generative artificial intelligence. Now with generative artificial intelligence, what that gave rise to these things called this transformer based architecture, which then out of which emerged these large language models, or these LLMs, off of which these AI chat agents are now born. And then these agents now are developing the ability, or we're developing the ability for these agents to be able to communicate with one another, which will then lead to what we call these agentic swarms. And as a result of these agentic swarms, what we're going to start to see is we're going to start to see mass automation, right? And this automation will first start off with the automation of tasks, which will then lead to the automation of processes, ultimately leading to the automation of jobs. So for us, our thesis is exactly that. The jobs are going to end up becoming a thing of the past very, very quickly, right? So we're not, and when I say very, very quickly, we're not talking, it's not decades out, right? It's certainly not decades out. We're talking a matter of, over the course of the next few years
Yeah.
is where that's going to start to happen. So when that happens, right? When that happens, we as humanity really need to start thinking about some foundational paradigm shifts in the way that we approach things. So this is really where we're starting to think more around, what does this post-agentic world look like, and the economic infrastructure in this post-agentic world is going to be a post-labor economy. So we have to start thinking about post-labor economics, whereas we've been accustomed to earning our value primarily by the exchange
Totally.
of our labor, right?
Yeah.
So when we're exchanging our labor for wages, what happens in a world where that labor of yours can algorithmically be replaced by an agent? So in that instance, what we're saying is that when that happens, not if that happens, but when that happens, you better make sure you own that agent that's replacing your own labor. So we're building
Yeah.
the infrastructure
Interesting.
to allow people to be able to own their own AI.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of fear around that. So, like, what advice would you give people about, like, okay, I'm at square one. How do I start to do that? Where do we go?
Look, the fear is well placed. Any kind of a fear, if you look at the root of it, the fear always comes from the unknown. And there
Totally.
is a lot of unknown with what's coming. But there is also certainty. And the certainty is that the jobs will go the way of the dinosaurs, right? So this whole mechanism that we're accustomed to thinking about how we earn our value. And look, historically speaking, we've always been a very labor-driven economy, right? Whether it's manual labor, whether it's creative labor, whether it's physical labor, whether it's intellectual labor, it's labor nevertheless that we exchange. So we're going to shift, right? That paradigm shift is going to be where we start to shift away from being labor driven and being paid for that labor to really being more towards an ownership economy. And in that ownership, that agent that replaces your labor, because look, labor is the output for what it is that Lindsay does, or whatever it is that Syed does, right? But the reason why we earn our value through labor is because that is that output mechanism, right? It's like, okay, great, cool, but I'm only going to value for what it is that I've gotten. But if that labor could get replaced agentically, then all of a sudden that labor becomes commoditized. And if
Yeah.
that labor becomes commoditized, then the value shifts from the output, which is the labor, into the input, which is the intellect. And the
Right.
intellect is how you do something, right? So the nuanced approach of how to do something, that is where the value is going to be, right? And it's not going to be a data play. It's not going to be a play on agents. It's not going to be a play on LLMs. All these things are going to end up getting commoditized, right? Today, Lindsey has access to the same set of data that Syed has access to. We're past those days where data would be exclusive, right? Now we're living in a world where instead of data being scarce, now we're drowning in data, right? So all of us have access to that data, but the way that Lindsey is going to interpret the same data set that Syed is going to interpret is going to be wildly different because Lindsey brings her own unique set of experiences that she's developed over the course of her life. So then the real value is no longer on the output, it's on the input. And that input, the most valuable asset of this very fast approaching future, ends up becoming the novel human experience. So
Yeah,
the ability to capture that human experience, own that human experience, and then be able to monetize on that human experience, that ends up becoming that future currency.
totally. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. And I'd love to understand more. What are some of the challenges that come with owning and controlling intellect?
So look, that's a very good question because we're already doing that, right? We're already giving away our experiences. We're
Yeah.
already training that, right? We're already creating these intellects. So the novel concept is not really going to be these intellects, right? Or because as human beings, we're already giving away our information, right? Every single inference
Everything
call,
we do.
every single inference call, every time I go into a chat GPT, every time I go into a Gemini, every time I go into a Claude, a Perplexity, anytime I'm asking it, hey, help me put this, and this together, that this, and this that I'm giving it information to, it has it. And now I'm renting it back from it, right? So we're already starting to approach that, right? And the scary situation in this instance is that Skynet scenario where all of a sudden all of our information, right, each and every one of ours goes into this massive super intelligence
Yeah.
under the control of Big Brother, right? Big tech, right? These centralized entities that will have access to everything and anything about me, right? It's going to know that. That's the route that we're heading towards, which leads towards this dystopian society, right? Which is something that
Yeah.
we want to try to avoid like the plague. So what's the solution for that? The solution is instead of going down that centralized approach, what we're positing is that it should be going down a decentralized approach, where instead of having a centralized overall super intelligence, where all of our collectives start to go in there, individuals should have the ability to own their own AI, own their own experiences. So you own that, and anyone else that wants access to it needs to get permissioned access from you. And every time they're accessing it and they're monetizing on it, you're entitled to a part of that monetization mechanism from them.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. I think that sounds a little less scary too, of like not having this massive centralized super intelligence, but I don't know. Maybe that's just my brain.
No, no, no. Look, I mean, it is a scary proposition. And that is something that, look, I mean, I've got 3 kids, right? And those are the things that sort of, keep me awake at night. It's like, what kind of a
Totally.
future are these kids going to end up having, right? So, and it's as a response to that, it's, this is why centralization is not the solution, which is where we're rushing towards, and decentralization is a solution to be able to build that out, which allows for a much more, it's the democratization of AI, right? And for us is that's a much better solution, a much better situation than the one that we're starting to head towards right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, and I'd love to understand more. You mentioned a little bit about kind of the ideation of this company, but I'd love to understand more your experience because you've found a few companies being a serial entrepreneur and advice that you would have for other entrepreneurs, especially in this bubble that we're approaching.
Yeah. So look, I mean, my biggest piece of advice that I would give to people is be careful what you wish for, right? And think very long and hard about it, because being an entrepreneur is one of those things, right? It's very sexy. It's very glamorous, right? When people hear someone like me talk, they're like, oh my God, like, they're immediately, they're taken in by the charisma and by the story and the in their mind, right, the success that they see. But what they don't realize is that what they're seeing, that is the end state, right? Or at least, if not the end state, the current state. What they haven't seen is what it takes you to get there. And
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is all about, and this is coming from someone who's like, a massive supporter of entrepreneurship, right? But at the same time, I think it's also that reality check needs to also be set in, where most people think that they're entrepreneurs, but what they actually are is what I call wantrepreneurs, right? So
Okay.
you could want to be an entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
the first sign of adversity that you're going to face, it's like, oh my God, this isn't it for me, right? And I've
Totally.
had multiple companies in the past, and I've had multiple co-founders with me, and it's like everyone thinks that they're an entrepreneur until they face some kind of turmoil. And the one guarantee in being an entrepreneur is the consistency of inconsistencies that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And that's all the kinds of roadblocks that you're going to have, right? So I would say, to be an entrepreneur, right, really question yourself, ask yourself, and I would say, to be a successful entrepreneur, you can't be a normal person. You have to have something in which the wiring on your brain, there's something not quite right with it, right?
Yeah.
Because normal people don't do these things, right? Normal people don't take on these kinds of massive risks that they want to do. And the problem is, most people are going into it for the wrong reasons, thinking that they're going to see the success, but the success is it's the success, the end product, which is a summation of all of the failures. So the one thing that you have to go into is knowing full well that you're going to come across massive failures, massive rejections. So long as you've got grit and you can power through that, and you've got a very stubborn personality to continue to push forward despite all the odds, um, entrepreneurship is probably not for you. It's a lot easier to get a job,
Yeah.
and
A lot less risk.
but with that being said, now it's kind of like, it's one of those situations where it's easier to get a job, but what's going to happen when jobs are not going to be an option? So you're
Totally.
going to be
Yeah.
forced to be more and more entrepreneurial, and you have to really question all of and you look, in this post-agentic world, it's not just that we start to go towards becoming a post-labor economy, and it's just the world of finance that's going to be impacted by this, or the world
Right.
of wages and labor, right? But even things like education, right? Health,
Yeah. Totally.
all of these things that are going to be coming in. So if you are someone who is who's has the ability to be able to learn by themselves, make AI your best friend. This will be the tool of the future. Know how to utilize it, know how to leverage it, and start to and unplug yourself from the metaverse and from social
Yeah.
media. Go out, interact with people, find those next set of folks that can help build things with you. Identify what are the things that I lack inside of me, right? And then find those people that can make up for that. Come together, leverage AI, and maybe you'll be that next big entrepreneur building the next big things.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Well, what is your goal for the future of SHIZA?
So there's our long-term goal, right? And then in order to get to that long-term goal, we've got a set of our short-term goals. So the long-term goal is, like I said, is to ensure that we truly democratize AI. We give this to the people. So our slogan with SHIZA is, own your AI before AI owns you. And it
Yeah, I like
really
that.
is that binary, right? It is that. It's either you're going to own it or AI is going to own you. So where our vision is to see a world in which individuals have access and own their own AI, a democratized world where AI is owned by the individuals, and then you're able to monetize on that. So
Yeah.
that's our mission and the vision that we're looking to build in this. We want to make sure that a post-agentic world is not a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah,
And in order to ensure that, this is where decentralization really starts to come into play, right? So that's our long-term vision for what we're looking to achieve. And the reality is that we don't really have that much time, even when we say long-term, right? The scales have changed. So long-term before used to be what used to be considered generational changes, right, over the course
yeah,
of millennia, started to happen over the course of centuries, then over the course of decades, to now
yeah.
where literally it's happening not
Being
even over the course of years, but
much
over the course
quicker.
of months, right?
Yeah,
So it's an accelerated pace that we're in. We're already in the acceleration phase. We just don't realize it because we're sitting inside the rocket ship
totally.
that's going at the speed of light. So we're not realizing it, but we are. We're there already. So our our relatively long-term vision is that, right, the democratization of AI, a world in which people own their AI. And then in order to get there, we've got some short-term goals, right? And those short-term goals right now are, we're a startup ourselves, right? So we launched at the in the beginning of 2024.
Okay.
We ourselves are a baby, but you grow very, very quickly in this world. Again, in this accelerated pace that we're in right now. So we came out of stealth at the beginning of this year. We went.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you very much. We have some incredible early believers in us.
Yeah.
With our early investors that came in, which allowed us to get to the point where we went post product in within the first 2 months of our launch. Then we went post revenue 3 months after that. And now what we're looking to do is we are planning on doing our token raise, which we're anticipating to doing either late. I would say like the earliest would probably be like within the mid-November timeframe, or the latest would be towards March. So within that window is when we're looking to
Yeah.
execute on that,
It's
and prior to
happening
that,
pretty
we're
quick
doing a
here.
small TGE.
Yeah. That's awesome. Very exciting stuff happening. It's funny, I think of, you're talking about this accelerated timeline, and I couldn't help but think about, like, as a parent, which you mentioned you have 3 kids, of how quickly things change and you don't ever notice it until you're, like, looking back at photos or, like, looking back at memories. So I think that's true. I think we're in this interesting time and things just continue to feel like they're happening quicker and quicker, and a lot of exciting things happening for your company.
And it's only gonna get quicker and quicker, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And the one advice I will give, some unsolicited
Yeah.
advice as well,
Go for it.
for anyone who is a parent or a would-be parent, which is, instead of being on social media with your phone,
Mhm.
right, use that phone to capture those moments of your kids being humans
Yeah.
outside of the digital world, inside of the physical world, because those memories are some things that you're going to cherish forever. They're going to grow, but then you're going to go back to those videos and reminisce, because these
Totally.
moments, I've got 3 kids of my own, and it's like every single moment that you think about those, you miss them, because it's when time, no matter where we go, we will not have the ability to bring back time, right? So at least if you can
Totally.
capture a snapshot of that within the moment, use this piece of technology for a purpose that you will find it'll actually become an asset for you, as opposed to it becoming a liability for you, which is what we're
Yeah.
doing right now.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, Saeed, anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
Look, I know it sounds, this sort of picture that we're painting about a post-labor economy and a post-agentic world. It sounds scary. To an extent, it could be very, very scary if we continue to go down the route of centralization and centralized systems. But there is hope, right? Whether we're successful at it or someone else's, right? You should aspire to try to a understand what these problems are and become that next phase of entrepreneur who's going to change that. And there will be jobs. I don't really like to use the term jobs disruption, which is very, very popular in the media, because to me that terminology of jobs disruption, it's too soft of a term, right? I call it jobs destruction. We're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
This technology
I
is
think
not
that's
going to
more
lead to
accurate.
disruption. Yeah, this technology is not going to lead to disruption. It will
Yeah.
lead to destruction.
Yeah. I think the
However,
disruption's already happened.
well, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to destruction, while that scares the pants off of most people,
Yeah.
to the entrepreneurs of the world, they should be doing backflips when they hear that term, because don't forget, destruction is the catalyst behind creation. So
Yeah. Yep.
that is
True.
where the opportunity lies. There's a new world that's starting to emerge, but that new world is not going to emerge until the old world and the old processes start to get destroyed. So that's happening. I want you to start thinking about what's going to be the things that need to be created post destruction, so you could position yourselves to become those future entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I think that's a really good perspective. I like that way of looking at it. Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate having you here today, and I feel like I learned a lot.
Well, Lindsay, it's a pleasure, and anytime you want me back on, I'm only a phone call away. Thanks.
I'll take you up on that.
Thank you for listening to Catalyst Chats. Like, share, and don't forget to follow.